Hello, welcome to this week's tax tip. Today we're going to go over dependents and who is qualified as a dependent. We're going to start with who is a qualifying child. And I have a list of questions to go over. You can just run through them in your mind to see if you have a qualifying child. First thing to ask is who lived with you? Take inventory of who lived with you. Did someone move in? What changed? What changed in your household in 2024? A qualifying child has to be either your child, a stepchild, or a foster child. So they had to have lived with you for more than half the year. They also can possibly have been the child, your stepchild, or your foster child. Was anyone that lived with you a sibling? A step and half siblings count for this, and also a child of a step or half sibling counts for this, or a child of obviously your sibling. Were they 18 or younger? If they were not 18 or younger, were they going to school? If they were going to school, were they 23 or younger? And if they were none of those, and you have a child that lived with you, were they totally and permanently disabled? Did you provide more than half of their financial support? Were they married? If your child was married and lived with you, there is still a possibility that you can claim them as a dependent on your return if they meet some of these other tests. If they were married and they are going to file a joint return and it's only to reclaim a refund, then you can likely still claim them as a dependent on your return. Okay, so let's just run through a scenario really quick. Let's say there's you and your spouse. Let's just married, filing jointly. You have a 17-year-old daughter. 17-year-old daughter comes home and says, I'm pregnant. So by November of 2024, we have the baby. We're going to call her Kay. We'll call the father of the baby her boyfriend, D. He's a good dude. And we're going to call the baby Plan C because Plan B did not work. So in this scenario, you have a minor child that is your biological child, and also a minor child that is your grandchild, both of which are potential dependents on your tax return. So you would run through the test of did they live with you for more than half of the year? And did you provide more than half of their financial support? If the answer to both of those is yes, then you can claim both of them as your dependent on your tax return. But let's change it up a little. Let's say Kay finds out she's pregnant and she says, hey, I'm going to finish high school. I'm going to do an online program, or I'm going to go get my GED, whatever it is. She's just going to finish her education, not go to high school. She gets a full-time job. She goes to work at the Home Depot and she makes $35,000 that year. At that point, you can no longer claim her as a dependent. You likely also cannot claim the grandbaby as your dependent. So then you have to start doing the monetary test of did you provide more than half of their financial support? And there's a bunch of different stuff to run through. I'm not going to get into all of that, but we're trying to keep it basic. However, if it is more of a benefit to you to claim the grandbaby as your dependent, and she agrees and says, okay, I'm not going to claim this baby as my dependent, then you could potentially claim, then you should be free and clear to claim because you meet all of the other tests. But the IRS will always default to the parent. So K would have first shot at claiming, or even D. Maybe D went to work at Home Depot and did his finished high school online, and, she stayed and finished her education. I don't know. Let's switch it up a little. K comes home, says, I'm pregnant, and they go to tell D's parents, and D gets kicked out of his house. So you take both. So you take him in. And so now you have K and D living with you. They say, hey, actually what we really want to do is we want to get married. Everybody gives consent. They go get married, and you provide more than half of their financial support. Let's just say they both want to finish high school. You know, they have part-time jobs, but they're squeaking by at the car wash or whatever this is, and they're not making a ton of money. And the only reason they would file a return would be to get their taxes back, or maybe they paid estimated taxes and they want to get those back. If there's no other reason for them to file a return, then K and Plan C are still qualifying dependents. They are still qualifying child for the dependent test. D is a different story. That's under qualifying relative at this point, and that's going to be a next section. But I'll refer back to this little example when I go to do that one. So as you can see, even simply determining who a dependent was, as far as even just a qualifying child, is really not that straightforward. Hopefully this was helpful. I can't go over every single exception. There's too much, would be here all night. But as always, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer anything that I can.